Presidential Quotes on Mistakes and Facts. It is much easier at all times to prevent an evil than to rectify mistakes. George Washington. Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passions, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. John Adams. On Independence. Yesterday, the greatest question was decided which ever was debated in America. And a greater perhaps never was, nor will be, decided among men. A resolution was passed without one dissenting colony, that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. John Adams. A pen is certainly an excellent instrument to fix a man's attention and to inflame his ambition. John Adams. You will never be alone with a poet in your pocket. John Adams. I pray heaven to bestow the best of blessings on this house and all that shall hereafter inhabit it. May none but honest and wise men ever rule under this roof. John Adams. On lying, he who permits himself to tell a lie once finds it much easier to do it a second and a third time, till at length it becomes habitual. He tells lies without attending to it, and truths without the world believing him. Thomas Jefferson. Regarding the public good, to secure the public good and private rights against the danger of faction, and at the same time to preserve the spirit and form of popular government, is then the great object to which our inquiries are directed. James Madison. National honor is national property of the highest value. James Monroe. I cannot ask of heaven success, even for my country, in a case where she should be in the wrong. And in Latin, let justice be done, though heaven may perish. May our country be always successful, but whether successful or otherwise, always right. John Quincy Adams. Regarding science. Science has helped transform the United States into the most productive nation in the world. Now and in the years ahead, we need more than anything else the honest and uncompromising common sense of science. Science means a method of thought. That method is characterized by open-mindedness, honesty, perseverance, and above all, by an unflinching passion for knowledge and truth. When more of the people of this world have learned the ways of thought of the scientists, we shall have better reason to expect lasting peace and a fuller life for all. Harry S. Truman. Knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. James Madison. In assuming her station among the civilized nations of the earth, it would seem that our country had contracted the engagement to contribute her share of mind, of labor, and of expense to the improvement of those parts of knowledge which lie beyond the reach of individual acquisition, and particularly the geographical and astronomical science. Looking back to the history only of the half-century since the Declaration of Independence, and observing the generous emulation with which the governments of France, Great Britain, and Russia have devoted the genius, the intelligence, the treasures of their respective nations to the common improvement of the species in these branches of science, is it not incumbent upon us to inquire whether we are not bound by obligations of high and honorable character to contribute our portion of energy and exertion to the common stock? John Quincy Adams. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. John F. Kennedy. The reason we are here is to talk about the superconducting super collider, as you've probably guessed already. At first I was a little nervous, addressing so many distinguished scientists on a subject of such complexity. The fact is, I envy the students here today, because they exist in a world that seems to put no limits on imagination. Outer space used to be called the final frontier, but today we have begun to tap another frontier, inner space. I think one of the reasons I've always had such little patience for those who talk about the limits of growth is that in my lifetime I've seen those limits shattered again and again by questing minds. It is our responsibility to the next generation to keep America a place where we can dream big dreams and then make them real. Ronald Reagan. I hold science in proper esteem. Today I have invited some of the smartest people in the country, some of the most imaginative and effective researchers in the country, some very smart people, to talk about the challenge that I issued in my State of the Union address: to grow our economy, to create new jobs, to reignite a rising, thriving middle class by investing in one of our core strengths, and that's American innovation. We've been a nation of dreamers and risk-takers, people who see what nobody else sees sooner than anybody else sees it. We do innovation better than anybody else. We don't just attract the best scientists or the best entrepreneurs. We also continually invest in their success. The next great American project we're calling the Brain Initiative. As humans, we can identify galaxies light years away. We can study particles smaller than an atom. But we still haven't unlocked the mystery of the 3 pounds of matter that sits between our ears. Barack Obama. As long as the ancient enemies are rampant in the world, illiteracy, ignorance, disease, poverty, and war, there's much for government to do. Lyndon B. Johnson. Freedom of the press. Our founding fathers here in this country brought about the only true revolution that has ever taken place in man's history. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another set of rulers. But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it along to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, we may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free. Ronald Reagan. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Where the press is free and every man able to read, all is safe. Thomas Jefferson. We believe very strongly in preserving the right to differ in this country and the right to dissent. If I have done a good job of anything since I've been president, it's to ensure that there are plenty of dissenters. There's not a person in this press corps that can't write what he wants to write, and I want to protect that. Lyndon B. Johnson. On coming to America. We came to America, either ourselves or in the persons of our ancestors, to better the ideals of men, to make them see finer things than they had seen before, to get rid of the things that divide, and to make sure of the things that unite. Woodrow Wilson. The bosom of America is open to receive not only the opulent and respectable stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions, whom we shall welcome to a participation of all our rights and privileges. George Washington. I'm disturbed by the debate that's taking place because I think it undermines the goodness of America. It doesn't recognize the valuable contribution that immigrants make to our society. George W. Bush. We're all part of one American family. We are united in common values, and that includes belief in equality under the law, basic respect for public order, and the right to peaceful public protest. A reverence for the dignity of every single man, woman, and child among us. Barack Obama. At times it seems like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates too quickly into dehumanization. Too often we judge other groups by their worst examples, while judging ourselves by our best intentions. This has strained our bonds of understanding and common purpose. But to renew our unity, we only need to remember our values. George W. Bush. Regarding America's place in the world. And that's about all I have to say tonight, except for one thing. The past few days, when I've been at the window upstairs, I've thought a bit of the shining city upon a hill. The phrase comes from John Winthrop, who wrote it to describe America as he imagined. I've spoken of a shining city all my political life, but I don't know if I quite communicated what I saw when I said it. In my mind, it was a tall, proud city built on rocks stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. Her glow is held steady no matter what storm. She's still a beacon, still a magnet for all who must have freedom. Ronald Reagan. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty. This much we pledge, and more. John F. Kennedy. To those old allies, whose cultural and spiritual origins we share, we pledge the loyalty of faithful friends. United, there is little we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. Divided, there is little we can do, for we dare not meet a powerful challenge at odds and split asunder. John F. Kennedy. For more than 70 years, presidents of both parties believed that American security and prosperity were directly tied to the success of freedom in the world, and they knew that the success depended in large part on U.S. leadership. This mission came naturally, because it expressed the DNA of American idealism. George W. Bush. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend of Western countries away from global engagement. Discontent deepened and sharpened partisan conflicts. Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seem more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. Really, it seems to be a combination of weariness, frayed tempers, and forgetfulness. George W. Bush. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and well understand the implications of the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. That always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. With the unbounded determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God. Franklin D. Roosevelt. America's Prisoners of War. The situation of our people held by the Japanese is of the greatest concern to us all. Franklin D. Roosevelt. I knew it was going to be a fairly dangerous mission because the day before, our air group had flown over Chichijima and we'd encountered a fair amount of flak. So I knew it was going to be tough. But this is what our duty was, no question about it. I saw that I couldn't possibly fly this plane back to the ship. When I saw the flame going along the wing, I said I better get out of here. I was just very lucky the submarine was there, because as I said, the fleet was going south, and if somebody didn't pick me up, I would have been captured and killed. They were very brutal on Chichijima. You worry about your men who didn't get out of the plane, and I always wondered why was I spared when 2 friends in the plane with me were killed. I don't know the answer. George H.W. Bush. The Reconciler-in-Chief. Let us restore the golden rule to our political process. Let brotherly love purge our hearts of suspicion and hate. Gerald Ford. We need compromise. We've had dissension. We need harmony. We've had a chorus of discordant voices. There's grown a certain divisiveness. We've seen the hard looks and heard the statements in which not the other's ideas are challenged, but each other's motives. Our great parties have too often been far apart and untrusting of each other. George H.W. Bush. This is a fact. The final lesson of Vietnam is that no great nation can long afford to be sundered by a memory. A new breeze is blowing, and the old bipartisanship must be made new again. To my friends, and yes, I do mean friends, and the loyal opposition, and yes, I do mean loyal, I'm putting out my hand. The American people await action. They didn't send us here to bicker. They ask us to rise above the merely partisan. George H.W. Bush. I want this country to show the world what we know to be true, that we are not just a collection of red states and blue states. We are still the United States of America. That's what we're fighting for. That's what we're pushing for. Barack Obama. Following 9/11, I saw a great nation rise as one to honor the brave, to grieve with the grieving, and to embrace unavoidable new duties. I have no doubt, none at all, that this spirit of service and sacrifice is alive and well in America. Second, let us remember that empathy and simple kindness are essential, powerful tools of national recovery. Finally, let us remember how small our differences are in the face of this shared threat. In the final analysis, we are not partisan combatants. We are human beings, equally vulnerable and equally wonderful in the sight of God. We rise or fall together, and we are determined to rise. George W. Bush. There should be no bitterness or hate where the sole thought is the welfare of the United States of America. No man can occupy the office of the President without realizing that he is President of all the people. Franklin D. Roosevelt. While men inhabiting different parts of this vast continent cannot be expected to hold the same opinions, they can unite in a common object and sustain common principles. Franklin Pierce. 60 years have elapsed since the establishment of this government, and the United States presents to the world the most stable and permanent government on earth. Zachary Taylor. Our nation lives in us, in our hearts and minds and consciences. The land we live in seems to be strong and active, but how fares the land that lives in us? Grover Cleveland. America consists of all of us, and it can consist of all of us only as our spirits are banded together in a common enterprise. That common enterprise is the enterprise of liberty, justice, and right. Woodrow Wilson. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive, and will prosper. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, which paralyzes needed effort to convert retreat and to advance. Franklin D. Roosevelt. What we call foreign affairs is no longer foreign affairs, it's local affairs. The world must learn to work together, or finally, it will not work at all. Dwight D. Eisenhower. On greed and arrogance. Like all Americans, I like big things, big prairies, big forests and mountains, big wheat fields, railroads, and everything else. But no people ever yet benefited by riches if their prosperity corrupted their virtue. Teddy Roosevelt. Have we changed as a nation, even in our time? Are we enthralled by material things, less appreciative of the nobility of work and sacrifice? My friends, we are not the sum of our possessions. They are not the measure of our lives. In our hearts we know what matters. We cannot hope only to leave our children with a bigger car, a bigger bank account. We must hope to give them a sense of what it means to be a loyal friend, a loving parent, a citizen who leaves his home, neighborhood, and town better than he found it. And what do we want the men and women who work with us to say when we're no longer there? That we were more driven to succeed than anyone around us? Or that we stopped to ask if a sick child had gotten better, and stayed a moment there to trade a word of friendship? George H.W. Bush. And we know that when we lose sight of our ideals, it is not democracy that has failed. It is the failure of those charged with preserving and protecting democracy. George W. Bush.